Hi, Babyccinos! You saying hello? I'm just going to make sure that, look, mop has fallen over in the background, Min. That's not very good, is it? Oh, my word. Everyone can see our mop. Well, there you go. Now you know that this is absolutely live from the Stennett household because we haven't even managed to get the mop out of the way. Hi, everybody. How are you? Are you okay? Last week, we sort of weren't here, but we were here, kind of, weren't we? Do you remember?
Here's my...
Oh, you've got your dancing cup. Last week, we weren't live with Babyccinos last week, were we? We did a little pre-recorded bit because I was having a week off. But we are live today and we've got some fun things to do. What have we been up to? Can you think of any fun things that we've been doing recently?
We're getting change. And I wish that to do this.
Oh, just your vest strap escaping. That is exciting. Anyway, we've been doing a few different bits and pieces. I've had a different kind of couple of weeks to my usual working weeks, but we are ready for Babyccinos this week, aren't we? We are so ready for Babyccinos. Oh, and snack time and a drink. It's all going very well in the Stennett household, isn't it? But what we want to do is crack on with what we're going to do this morning, don't we? Crack on. That reminds me because you had eggs for breakfast, didn't you? We said crack on then. It's all cracking on. So, if you're joining us for the first time, we're so pleased to see you. I'm Becky, and I'm a church leader in the Methodist Church, and this is Miriam, who doesn't often, I'd like to say she doesn't often introduce herself with a mouthful. I'm not totally sure that's true. Miriam is my youngest. She's 3, and we love looking at the Bible stories and doing some craft around them.
I'm a church leader.
You're not yet a church leader.
I'm growing up.
You are growing up, and I think there's many who would argue that you're just as much a church leader as I am at the moment. Yeah. So what we love to do on a Monday morning is we like to look at some stories that are in the Bible. We love to do some crafts about them. Recently, we've done a little bit about families, I suppose, and journeys, haven't we? So in the last few weeks, we looked at a while back at Abraham, and then looked at lots of different parts of his family. And then we thought, oh, well, Abraham goes on a journey. What about somebody who goes on a journey in the New Testament? So Abraham is in the oldest bit of the Bible. And then there's this bit in the middle where we get to the end of the Old Testament and Jesus arrives at the beginning of the New Testament. And the person we're looking at now is somebody who came after Jesus but wanted to tell everyone the good news about Jesus. And that person is Paul. But he wasn't called Paul last week when we started.
No.
Last week when we started, he was called, can you remember? It was a long time ago for you. He was called Saul. Saul. He was called Saul when we met him last week.
No, it's Paul.
And he became Paul. He became Paul. Do you remember about it? He was on his way. And Saul wasn't very nice to Christians, people who follow Jesus. He was mean. He wanted to put them in prison and sometimes even worse. I'm not sure you should talk with your mouth full. Maybe finish your mouth full. And he was on his road to go and he was on the way. He was going to go and tell off some more Christians for being naughty as he thought they were. And what happened? There was a big bright
to a present.
Oh, okay. There was a big bright light, and God spoke from heaven. It was like Jesus met Saul, and he said, "Oh, why are you being mean to all the people who follow me?" And suddenly, Saul couldn't see, but he knew that he'd met God on the road. And he went on a little bit, and he met a friend there called Ananias. That's a difficult word.
Yeah.
And he stayed with Paul. He told Saul, he was still Saul then, and he stayed with Saul and told him all about Jesus. And as they went into this conversation, there were prayers, they were learning about God, and Ananias helped Paul to be able to see again, Saul to be able to see again, but then he became Paul. It's very confusing. He was called Saul and he became Paul. It's going to be less confusing this week because we're going to look at Paul for 2 more weeks, and he's definitely Paul now. He was Saul, but he's definitely Paul now. Oh, that's not very nice. And Paul went on a really big journey. Well, he sort of went on lots of journeys, really, and we're going to hear about that as we go through the morning. It's another one of those mornings, but I'm not going to sit and read you a whole story because actually it covers a long chunk of the Bible and you might get a bit bored. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to tell little bits of the story as we do some different crafts. You ready for crafting?
Yeah.
Just snacking at the moment, though, huh? And next week we're going to look at Paul again. Now, this week we're going relatively mess-free, I think. I mean, let's find out how that works out. And we're going fairly sort of simple, straightforward, paper and pens and scissors sort of crafts. It's not going to be...
And glue.
And, well, yeah, there is glue. Relatively messy. Next week...
My fluffy hats
And you're going to do some hearts and stars, yeah. Next week, heads up,
And
grown-ups, it is going to get mad. So
I like my heart.
next week, there's going to be baking, there's going to be water, yeah.
Snakes.
There's going to be snakes. Paul's journey is pretty exciting, and it's not always that good for him. Yes.
I have to do the crazy.
So, but this week we need to do some sensible things before we get to the crazy. I don't have the energy for crazy this week. We're going to do some sensible, straightforward crafts this week as we start to hear about Paul's journey. You up for it?
Yeah.
So we heard last week about this amazing light that came from heaven that was blinding, and it blinded Saul, who became Paul. And we heard about how that was one of the things that helped Paul to realise who God really was, who Jesus really was. And so we're going to hear a bit about what happened next. We're going to hear about the light not just being for Saul, but the light being for everyone. So here's a bit about light for everyone. So this is all about light for everyone. So we had the light on the road to Damascus where Saul, who is now Paul, saw the light and started to realise who God was, who Jesus is. So now he's Paul. He's definitely Paul now. Don't confuse him, he's definitely Paul. And we thought we would do a craft to start off this week that reminds us a bit about the first bit of Paul's journey after this, really. Because he starts to teach about Jesus, he starts to tell people about who God really is. And one of the things he says is that he's been sent as a light for everyone. So a light changed his mind, didn't it? A light changed Saul's mind about who God was or who Jesus was. And he then became a light for other people to help them to change their minds. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make a light switch cover, and some of you might have made one of these before with me. I can't really remember.
And I have some special glass.
You're going to need some card. You're going to need, in a minute, I'm just going to get the craft knife and the chopping board. You can understand why that's not here at the moment.
Back of you.
Yeah, it's at the back. I'm going to get it, don't worry. You're going to need some card. You're going to need ruler.
Special.
Pencil. And what you might...
Sharp.
You can use paper as well, by the way. It's not a problem. And you could just decorate with pens and pencils. Miriam, of course, likes to get messy, so we're decorating with... Now look, you see it says ground cinnamon, but it's stars. Spice jars, great little craft tubs. And also you can keep gluing them with the lid on. And hearts. So Miriam's probably going to get a bit gluey. The first thing that you need to do, I would say this is a grown-up's job, but if you're one of the older children watching, I reckon you'll do this beautifully. The first thing you need to do is take your ruler, and don't forget to take a pen or a pencil with you. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to measure. Look at the scrap paper. Look at all the nice drawings that happen in our house.
No, that's Daddy. That's Daddy.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm not going to use that one, scrap paper. Well, I'll use this one as scrap paper.
Yeah.
One of the things you need to do first of all is you're going to need to go and measure your light switch. So I'm going to do that. You need to measure how big it is all around the outside. And then you need to measure how big the switch is in the middle. And then you need to measure how far the switch is from each side. Now, that's going to take me a minute.
Mummy?
Yeah?
Can I do my own story?
Well, you can now. That's what I need you to do. So I'm going to go and measure the light switch, which is just at the end of the room. And it's going to take me a minute. But in the meantime, you know that you're in good hands because a certain Miss Mim is going to keep you company. Are you going to tell them a story while I just do that? You chat. I'm going to measure the light switch. Yeah, you keep chatting to us, Mim. What's happening in your life at the minute?
Mummy, you should go.
Yeah? What have you been up to, Miriam? Can you tell us all?
So, I will be. I will. Me and Mummy and Mum and Ruben and Mim and Daddy won't be here anymore because we're going to do family rally worship today.
Yeah, we didn't do family friendly yesterday, did we? Did we do the big sing in the afternoon though?
No.
Yeah, we did. What did you do when we were doing big sing?
My Mummy and Hero. We sing the special Hero song.
hero song?
Yeah. Family wear and family wear to work.
Oh, we have been singing a hero song at family worship. Does it go, God's people aren't super brave superheroes? Is that what you're thinking about? Yeah. I've done the measuring, Mim. Well done for keeping everyone entertained. You see, it doesn't take long, and I don't know if you're like me, grown-ups that are with your children.
Sure.
Sometimes it's really tempting to just keep an eye on the kids the whole time. But you know what? You can actually walk to the other room and measure over the light switch, can't you?
Sharp.
I'm going to use a craft knife for this. Now,
that's a sharp knife.
It is super sharp, so I'm keeping it well out of the way of Miriam. It is not for children to use.
And River can't use that special knife.
Now you can do all of this absolutely fine with scissors. You can. It's just a bit simpler with the craft knife, but you'll be able to do all of this with scissors, no trouble. But even those we should keep out of the way of children. I'm not very good at that all the time. So I'm going to keep my craft knife out of the way. Now I've got all the dimensions of our light switch now. Very exciting times in the Stennett household. I now know how big our light switches are. This is thrilling stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start
Mummy, you can't use that special colouring paper.
Oh, can I not? Well, I thought we might use it for the next craft. So I'm going to start marking out onto my card how all the dimensions of the light switch. Okay, so it shouldn't take long. I'm going to start just drawing a line down here. What are you chuckling about? You're chuckling at my line drawing.
No, I'm not.
So rude.
I'm chuckling about the flowers.
About our flowers?
Yeah.
Are they funny?
Yeah.
They're quite beautiful.
They're funny.
Nobody else can see them though, they're behind the camera. That's a bit of a shame. So I'm going to just start. This is a good thing while Miriam's finishing off her snack as well. I'm going to plot it out. Somehow that looks really tiny. Have I measured that correctly? I definitely have, but it looks very small. That's a bit disconcerting. Never mind. Then I'm going to measure down to see where our light switch is.
House.
Do a little line there. Do all this in pencil because then you can rub it out later. But equally, you could do it on the back of the card and switch it over. Because, I mean, I'm pretty sure that light switches must be symmetrical, mustn't they? It must be that if you switched it. You finished. Well done. No.
Aww.
You can do after we finish with Babyccinos.
Okay.
I'm just going to cut this out now, and then it's going to be time to decorate, Mim. You up for it? You up for decorating? Are you going to decorate this light switch cover?
Yes. Hatties, daisies, gluey.
Yeah, so we'll put some glue on. So I'm going to cut it out. I have to say, this looks very small. When I've done it before, I'm sure they've been bigger. Well, never mind. It should fit. Let's see how my measuring goes, shall we? Now, if you're using a craft knife, try and use a metal ruler, just because otherwise...
Don't use that one.
Okay,
don't use
that.
That.
I'm sure this doesn't look right, Mim. Never mind. I think
it
it'll be
is.
fine. I think it'll be fine. We can always make another one later, but we'll just show everyone what we're doing, won't we? Make sure you measure correctly. And what you could do, I'm not going to do it again because you don't really need to be left in Miriam's company again, but you could just go and check the size against the light switch before you decorate. So I've cut out the square, and I'm going to cut out where the switch is. I would really recommend doing this first if you're using glue and things, because otherwise I think it's going to get really, really tricky to cut it out afterwards. If you're just using paper and pens and things, you wouldn't need to worry about cutting out the switch just now, because what you could do is you can do all the colouring you want to do and then cut the switch out later. Just make sure the kids know that the middle bit is going to be missing, because you need a hole for the switch. That is very important, I have to say. Do you know, I'm sure this just looks a bit short, but it's not a problem because it'll look fine. So what I've done is I've used a craft knife to cut out the sides, but also the hole in the middle where the light switch goes. So Mimsy, it's over to you now. I'm going to put the chopping board to one side. You can use a craft mat for cutting, obviously, but I've just used a chopping board to show you that you've probably got everything you need in your house. You probably don't really need to get anything special. The craft knife makes it easier. Are we going to get gluey?
Yeah. That's the colour.
Good. I am loving using a spice jar, just a little spice jar, an old spice jar, which is a little bit because I decided to replace spice jars. Is anyone else doing weird things in lockdown? I did some weird things. I ordered special jars to keep spices in, and I mean, they look really lovely, but what a weird thing to do. Make sure you just go on the blue. But it means that I could really clean out my spice cupboard. And you don't really ever need that amount of spice, I don't think. That's quite a lot of spices. Particularly something like cinnamon, you only ever use a tiny bit at a time, don't you? So I've got smaller jars now, and I can order them from the spices from our plastic-free shop in smaller quantities. And it means I've got all these jars left, which are great for craft supplies, and it's great for putting a bit of PVA glue in, and then just screwing the top back on. And I mean, actually, we haven't used that in probably 5 or 6 days, and it's absolutely fine. Goodness me, what a revelation. All these things that we're learning in lockdown. Lots of you will have had much better ideas than that before now. Lots of you will be thinking, I always do that with my PVA glue at home. In which case, I'm really pleased for you. I've just only got there now. So Mims is going to cover it in glue. That is looking lovely. You could do any sort of decoration you want. If you're old enough to write and you wanted to write something on it, you could write something, couldn't you? You could say something like, God make me a light for everyone. Or something like sent as a light to everybody, something like that. Or God's light is for everyone, because that's part of it. So there was a group of people who thought that really the knowledge of God and the love of God was really only for them. And then there was a group who said, well, yeah, it's for us, but it's for everyone else too. And that's what we believe, isn't it, Mim? That God's love is for everyone.
Talking.
Jesus says for everybody. We say Jesus' love is for everybody, don't we? I think that's lots of glue. What are we going to put on next?
And Jesus didn't know if he died.
Jesus died, but then what happened?
Alive.
Then he's alive! See? You don't need me.
He's at our house now.
But he's everywhere. That's it. I think that's plenty of glue. Should we get some sprinkles on there?
Oh, yeah.
Are we going to start with hearts or stars? We're going to need the glue again later, so I'm not going to screw the glue down just yet. Hearts.
I had those.
So we're going to sprinkle on a few hearts. That'll be nice, because then we can talk about how the love of God is for everyone as well as the light of God, can't we? Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, you could make several of these in different sort of patterns and things, couldn't you? You're going to sprinkle them on. And what we're going to do is we're going to put all our sprinkles on, then we're going to make sure it's not stuck to the paper, because at the moment it looks pretty stuck to the paper. But I think what we'll do is we'll let it dry. And I'll try and take a picture of it for you for next week once it's blue tacked onto the light switch. But you'll get the idea of this. You don't really need me to show you a picture here to understand how to do this. Basically, a bit of blue tack behind the card and make sure that the hole goes over the actual switch. Now, also, if you've got a dimmer switch or something, obviously you're going to need to make a slightly more difficult hole, aren't you? But I think you've got it. That's probably going to be plenty, Mimsy. Oh, are they not coming out?
No.
Shall I tip them into your hand a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure we bought all of these things as like table confetti at some point, but what a waste. And isn't it annoying? Have you ever used table confetti and then you're hoovering it up for about a year? So we just use it as craft stuff now. Not sure that's what the manufacturers had in mind. Not terribly environmentally friendly either, are they? But we're quite enjoying them. And we've got them to use, we might as well use them. Are you going to use stars as well? The hearts are looking lovely. What else do you think people could decorate with, Miriam? They could paint, I suppose, couldn't they? People could paint. Are you going to stick some stars on before this glue all dries, darling?
Yeah. Quickly.
Shall I put some in your hand again? Just a little... Right, keep your hand really nice and flat. Woo! There we go. Lots of stars. And that's lovely. Like I say, you could add a little reminder, couldn't you, to say, God's light is for everyone, or God send me as a light to everybody, something like that. We could do with a bit more light. Goodness me, we have actually got a ceiling window above us, and it's so gloomy outside. Is it gloomy where you are? So here's what Miriam's done. Now, what you can't quite see at the minute is where the middle is.
No.
So we'll just move those stars and hearts out of the way.
No, because you...
Beautiful.
You can't go near anybody.
So what we're going to do, because I'm worried it's going to glue itself to the paper, Mim, I'm just going to lift it off a little bit. I might just put it on a new piece of paper. What do you think? Just so it doesn't get too gluey on the paper. Yeah?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of scrap paper in this household. It's quite a useful thing. And then people can see a bit better. there's a beautiful light switch cover, and then you can stick it on your light switch, and every time you switch that light on when you come into a room, you can remember that God has sent you as a light to be the light for everybody, that Jesus is the light of the world, and that you, just like Paul, are sent to bring that light to everybody that you meet. I think that's a great reminder. I love those light switch covers, so I can't wait to see what you get up to making them. Should we do another craft activity?
Oh, yes!
Are you ready? Let's go on to activity number 2.
Yeah. This is my book.
So we are talking about Paul's journey. Now, as you saw on the last activity, as you can see now, you're going to find this in the book of Acts. And I've said you can find it in the chapter 13 and then onwards, because Paul's journey kind of carries on and on. We're going to choose a nice colour of paper. Which are you going to choose, Mim? There's just some light blue and there's some yellow. Which do you think?
Oh, yellow.
You're going to have yellow. Should I have yellow too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
So Paul's journey, it
Mummy,
starts...
Mummy, I think you need to stay in here.
You want to stay in there? Yeah, that's okay. You could put it on top, couldn't you?
Because
Or are you going to keep it like that? You're going to keep it like that?
You have to stay in it.
That's a good idea. Put
Because-
something underneath, because otherwise it might go through.
Because she needs to go.
We need pens and we need paper for this. And then at the end, you're going to need some counters and some dice, because what we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a little journey map. And it's going to be a little bit of a game as well. Now, look.
Pink.
Paul's journey, in fact, he does lots of little journeys. They're quite big journeys. Do you know, here's the first one. The
Orange.
first journey. Look, I've got a lovely map in my Bible.
Orange.
And this is the first time he goes on a journey. Look at all the places he goes. And remember, there's no buses. There are no taxis. There's no cars or trains.
Oh,
You can just about see the arrows of all the places he goes. He does these actually really big journeys. And if any of you have done big journeys, you'll know sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't go so well. Now, Paul, because he was also sharing this message, which we think is a great message, but some people found quite difficult, his journey was really difficult because people didn't always like what he said.
He didn't say something is Paul. He said something about tall Paul.
A tall Paul? He might have been. Anyway, so his journey...
Mummy, his name is called Tall Paul.
He's Tall Paul. We can call him Tall Paul. So Tall Paul, he goes on lots of journeys. And actually his journey when he's moving around from different places, we've got 2 particular journeys that in the Bible, but you don't need to know about that. What you need to know is he kept going on journeys. He went on long, long journeys. But also after that, you know, he writes lots of letters. So really Paul's journey kind of takes us through a lot of the New Testament as we see where he's up to and who he's speaking to. So Paul's journey from Acts 13 onwards, I do not suggest you go and start reading at the 13th chapter of Acts and carry on reading to the end of his journey. That would take you a long time. But dip in and out because it's really interesting. I mean, like I said, next week we've got ships and we've got snakes and all sorts. Whoa. This week what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the fact that Paul went on a journey and that we go on journeys too. Now, we've done quite a lot about journeys at Babyccinos, haven't we? Do you remember last time when it was Abraham, we were packing the saddlebags on the camels? Do you remember that? We made camels with envelopes. Everyone agrees Reuben's was the best. It did outshine mine. I quite happily admit that. So we're going to talk about journeys again.
Journeys again.
Now, because Paul did so much journeying, and because sometimes it was good and sometimes it wasn't so good, sometimes it was hard, sometimes bad things happened, we're going to have a little bit of think about journeys that we go on. Now, some people go on lots of... I think it might have been our smart speaker, which will remain brandless.
I don't want to do it again.
Okay, shh, don't say her name. Now, we go on lots of journeys, don't we? Now, some of us, we go on lots of journeys where we actually travel and we might go by foot or by car or by bus or by train or by plane or by boat. We might do that. We've done some journeys like that. Or...
carriage.
Right, that's not what I was expecting. Or we might go on journeys...
Or bus. Or...
Yeah, there's lots of different ways. Or we might go on our journeys through life that sometimes are up and down as well. That's the kind of journey we're going to think about today. So we've called it Paul's Journey, My Map. So we're going to make a map that's a little bit like our lives. Now, what I'm going to do, we're going to make it like a game. So start with your pen and a piece of paper, and you can make this look however you want. I'm going to start with a little path.
I also start with a little path.
You're going to do a path as well. And then because I want to use this as a game, I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to do another line that follows that one so that I can make some spaces. Now, while I'm doing this, you might like to think a bit about the different things you're going to have on your journey. Now I'm going to do an end space.
And this is poop. This is poop.
And I'm going to do a start. Okay, so look, I've got a start and end. In case you were wondering what on earth I'm wittering on about, can you see it? Oh yeah. So I've got a start at the bottom, I've got an end at the top. Now, I'm going to put some spaces along the way, and you can think about what you're going to do. Now, I was thinking about different ways that you could do it. So for some of you who are maybe a little bit older than Miriam, this could be that you could think about your journey maybe at school. So if maybe you have maybe you're still quite young in school, you might want to think about your journey from September 2019 to September. So when you started school at the beginning of this year, you might like to think about that journey to next September, mightn't you? And say, what was really good? Then we had this weird time when we all had to be off school. And then the summer holidays are coming, but we've kind of been at home anyway. So you might like to think a bit about that journey. Grown-ups might like to think about the whole of 2020.
Mommy, I think we already gone to holiday.
Yeah.
But I want to go on holiday again.
Okay. Some of you might like to be thinking about your Christian journey, and some of you might be thinking about what it's been like to not be at church. So you can think about the good things and the bad things. We're looking for a combination of things that are good and things that are bad. And I've got something that looks a bit like this.
Nanas are good.
Nanas are good.
But
Finding a love of bananas.
Things are not good.
I'm not sure that's... You like spicy things.
I don't.
Oh, changed your mind about that. So we're looking for some good things and some bad things that have happened. So, for example, I might like to think about what it's been like to be away from church. So, we'll get that in a bit. So, we've got to have some good things and some bad things, okay? So, if I write in red, those are going to be things that are bad. And if I land on a red thing, maybe I have to go back 2 spaces. You can make your own rules about this. I'm going to put a little bit of you know what a key is? So you can put a little square at the side of your game, your journey map.
Another blue.
And I'm going to write red is go back 2. Go back 2 spaces. That's what red's going to be. So I'm going to think about the things that have made me feel quite sad about being away from church. So I'm going to put missing church family. That's been a really sad one for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I miss Hillary.
Oh, do you? Should we put that one down? Yeah. Missing Hillary and junior church leaders.
Yes, and I like Hillary.
Yeah, you've got lots of junior church leaders that you love, haven't you?
Yeah.
So we're going to put...
I all missed them.
Yeah, missing junior church leaders. We'll put that one on here because that's sad. I'm going to put another few on. I'm going to put... there are so many things that I miss about church. It's a bit difficult, really. I miss preaching, actually. Some of you are going to think that's weird. I'm going to put that.
I miss Sharon and Hillary.
I'm not doing as much preaching as I would usually do because we're doing family-friendly worship, aren't we? And honestly, you don't want one of my 25-minute epic sermons, do you? Missing Sharon and Hillary. Missing friends at church. You could be... We serve great coffee at church now. Not every church can say that, but you might miss the church coffee. I certainly miss sharing over coffee. So I'm going to put some of that. Missing sharing food and drink together. And then I think I'm going to also put missing sharing communion, bread and wine. So these are some of the things on my journey this year that have been quite hard.
Get Jesus Christ, gives you peace.
You do say that.
That was baby.
Oh, I'm going to get that lid in a little while. So I've put onto my map some of the things in my journey this year that have not been so good, okay? And when we look at Paul's journey this week and next week, they're probably a bit more dramatic than that. As a little bit of a spoiler, he ends up in prison at least twice. There are snakes, there's a shipwreck. So it's not always good, is it? And actually that's the same with our journeys.
Ruben's got some jelly snakes from Auntie.
That's true, Auntie Jo gave jelly snakes. Maybe that would be an appropriate snack for next week then.
And I want to eat some
You want to eat jelly snakes. There have also been some really good things. So I'm going to put some green things in which enable you to go forward 3 spaces.
I got some green, Mummy.
Oh, okay. So what have been some of the good things? Actually, doing family-friendly worship all the time has been amazing. We've really enjoyed that, haven't we?
Yeah,
so I'm going to put family-friendly worship. Now, look, we've also really missed being together at Babyccinos in the library, but I'm going to put Babyccinos online as well.
And we didn't miss. We didn't go. We didn't miss. We didn't go to Babyccinos last night.
Last week, we did a little video for last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
That meant we had... Well, I'd like to say we had a day off. That's not totally true. I've had a little bit of time off, but I've also had time doing a different kind of work. So I had a lot of hours in front of a computer screen last week.
Was coming to family worship.
Yeah. What else has been really good?
My Babyccinos.
Now, I tell you something I've really enjoyed that's been really good about being away from church at the minute. I've really enjoyed that I can go to different people's services. So I'm going to put sharing with others, because I've been able to go to some of the worship that my friends and colleagues are leading, people that I know from different places, worship through the week. It's been amazing. So I'm going to put sharing with others has been brilliant. Here's another one. Well, there's a few things actually.
Nanny and Sue.
And we've done lots of worship together as a team. So I'm going to put a team, working as a team, which we probably don't do as well as we have done recently. Working as a team. Now, if you're thinking about your journey from school, or you could be thinking of all different parts of your life, if you're very, very little, you might be thinking about how it's been just during lockdown, because sometimes it's hard to remember much more than that. What's been good about lockdown?
And we've got some free belongs to babies, little ones.
Yes, we do. You might be thinking about the fact that you've managed to have loads of really fun time as a family. That would definitely be a green one to go forward a few spaces. A bad thing might be you've not been able to see all of your family. Maybe you've missed grandparents or aunties and uncles. Maybe you've missed doing some of the things. We've missed swimming lessons, haven't we?
Yeah.
And things like that.
And we didn't miss. We're going to baby and to the swimming pool.
Well, it's been sad. I've missed going to the swimming pool for myself as well. I've just got myself a swimming pass before lockdown. Can you believe it? So we
had a shark swimming pool and a shark swimming pool.
Oh yeah.
I got a.
That was our paddling pool, wasn't it?
I was shark paddle pool and was got a hole.
That was very
it,
upsetting.
So you need to get another one.
That was very upsetting, wasn't it? I'm going to put a few more green things in. Other things that have been good. New ways to study together. Study the Bible. New ways to study the Bible. That's been a good one. I'm going to try and think of just one more green one. One more green one. What shall I do? I'm going to do...
We missed Babyccinos.
Yeah, we missed real Babyccinos, but Babyccinos Live has been a lot of fun and we've been able to do it together. That's been nice, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to think of one more really good thing about the fact that we've had to do church quite differently. I'm going to think about new things we've learned to go forward. So, learning new skills. Now, you could do, you can draw pictures in the other spaces, whatever you want to do, but if you've got a sort of mix of things that are going to take you forward and take you back, things that have been good, things that have been bad, I think this is quite a helpful way to think about how good or bad your time has been really this year. You might be doing the whole of 2020. You might be doing about your school. What about your teeth?
Oh, your teeth is bad.
What about your teeth?
And you get some new teeth.
Oh, okay. That was strange. Anyway, you might be thinking about the whole of 2020. You might be thinking about your school year. You might be thinking about being away from church.
Feels like and pink.
Well, some boys like pink as well. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, what you can do
Joel
is
likes
you can
pink.
play your game together, and then what you can
Joel
do.
would like pink.
I'm sure he does. What you can do is when you're playing your game, I've got some counters. I mean, you need a dice as well. That was on the list at the beginning. You need a dice. I got some counters. You could make your own counters, or you could grab the nearest things. And I found a fish and a tiny little Grimbot. In fact, a tiny Grimbot that's lost half of his pants, and I don't even know how that's possible on such a tiny character. Grimbots. So you can use whatever you want for counters. You roll your dice and you make your way along. And as you go along with your friends or your family members, you can talk about those good and bad things that have happened, can't you? And that's a really good thing to do, to share about that. Paul tells us all about his experiences of good things and bad things, and it helps us to learn. So this could be a good thing about learning about each other and supporting each other when things aren't so good. So that is Paul's journey, but my map, okay? Recognising that there are good and bad things, there are ups and downs. Sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't, and that we can share that and we can learn from each other and we can look after each other. So that is your little map game. I can't wait to see how creative you get with that. I bet you do some really amazing things. Shall we get on to the last one, Mimsy? Yeah, let's do it. Are you ready? Like I said, it didn't always go very well. And Paul often had friends with him, different friends, and we're going to hear about something now that happened with him and his friend called Silas. And this is the story of them ending up in prison.
Ready?
So this is all about Paul and Silas in prison. Not good. Why did they... Oh, that's your beautiful drawing. It's lovely. We could play that later, couldn't we? Do you want to put it with my one? It's just over there. So we're going to learn about Paul and Silas in prison. Now, they got put in prison because they were telling the good news, the story that we love, all about the goodness of God, the goodness of Jesus. But people didn't like it. Yeah, well, I want you to do me some drawing on here.
Okay.
You're going to need paper or cards. You need a couple. I've got two different colours. If you've got a black card, that would be ideal, but I'm doing it in red so you can see that it's not really the end of the world. Are you just doing some drawing? Can you draw Paul and Silas on there for me?
Okay.
Yeah, you get drawing. So on one piece of paper, you're going to draw the inside of a prison where you've got Paul and Silas, okay? And they are trapped inside this prison. They are locked away because people do not like what they have been saying. There's all sorts of reasons why. They felt that it was threatening. They felt like it wasn't the sort of thing that people needed to hear.
I can write on my own.
You can actually. You can write your name, can't you? But if you could draw a picture of Paul and Silas, that would be really good. Now, this is another job for the grown-ups, really. On the other piece of card, I'm going to mark out where we're going to make some prison bars, okay? So you need quite a good amount of card at the top and quite a good amount of card at the bottom. And remember, you're going to need to do bars, so I would make them reasonably wide if I were you. So I'm going to draw these on. Probably what I'm going to do...
This is a special hat.
Wow.
You can't see it.
I'm probably going to do about sort of, 3 centimetres or so from each end.
This is a hat.
And then I'm going to go along...
Funny hat.
Well, let's see how this works out, shall we? We ended up with 23 centimetres. I don't even know how to work that out. Well, we can do 1.5 centimetres at a time, maybe. Oh! That's somebody trying to phone me. We'll speak to them later, shall we? So do 1.5 centimetres along.
I think that's the garage. I think that's the garage.
But it might, do you know, it could be the garage. We're trying to get in touch with the garage because one of our cars needs fixing.
Yeah, it's the white one.
It's the white one.
Not the black one.
Our white one has been nothing but trouble, hasn't it, Mim?
Yeah, we used our white one long way ago.
Yeah. So I'm going to just mark out all of these bars.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be cutting them out, aren't we?
Yeah.
Using the craft knife again.
Yeah.
And like I say, try and leave quite a big space at the top of the bottom. Are you drawing 2 people in there? Are you drawing Paul?
Yeah.
Can you draw Paul for me?
I can't.
Yeah. Has he got a
I
head?
am doing it now.
Has he got a head? You know, eyes? Just thinking of things you might want your
Just doing the
drawing
heart
to have.
first.
So I've marked out top and bottom of bars.
But
Okay.
I'm not finished my heart yet.
I'm just going to. Oh, you're doing a heart in there as well. That's
Yeah.
quite nice. But remember, prison's it's not a very nice place, is it? So I'm going to draw lines.
It's
all the way
not
along.
a good prison.
Prison's not a good place to be. It's not nice.
Are presents.
Oh, presents are nice. Prisons are bad.
Yeah.
They're not nice places to be. And Paul and Silas ended up there. They were going around telling everybody how wonderful God is, how great Jesus is. And then, people didn't like it. So they put them in prison. They put them in prison, which is not a nice place to be.
No.
Not good, Mimsy. Not very good at all. Now, it does have a happy ending, but I'm not going to tell you about that happy ending just yet. And this is also not the only time that Paul ends up in prison. Goodness me, he was having a time of it. People didn't always like what he had to say. Again, I'm going to probably leave about 3 centimetres at the top and at the bottom. It just gives you a good little frame, because this one needs to be able to stick on. It needs to be able to move a little bit. It's all pretty exciting. So I'm just going to join. Do you know, I really wish I'd got myself a sharp pencil rather than a blunt pencil crayon. It's not gone very well. Never mind. And we'll just draw that line across. Now, it's craft knife time, so again, grown-ups only. I'm going to start cutting out some of these bars, okay? So remember, it's only every other bar that we're going to cut out, but it does mean that you need to cut it down every line.
I did. What is that?
This is going to be prison bars, Mim.
This is prison bar.
Well, you've got the prison cell, haven't you? I've got the prison... Oh.
I've got a prison too.
I've got the prison bars to go in front of the prison cell. So we need, in the cell, on your picture, Mim, we need to be able to see Paul, and we need to see his friend Silas. Are they in there?
Not yet.
It's a really exciting story, this one, and it involves a bit of an earthquake as well, which is quite exciting. Oh, it's quite dramatic, some of these things that happen in the Bible. Oh.
Bars.
Well, you don't need to draw the bars because I'm doing the bars. Can you make sure that Paul is in there?
Okay. I'm doing it.
You're going to do it on there, are you? So draw Paul. He's a man, isn't he? So you could draw it in the middle of the paper. That would be really good, Mim. I'm sure...
I'm doing bars too.
Well, why are you doing the bars? I'm doing the bars.
I'm doing bars too.
You funny bean. You don't need to do the bars. I'm doing the bars. This is the weirdest argument to have, isn't it? We're both doing the bars, are we?
Yeah.
I don't know how you ended up being quite so West Yorkshire with your accent. Not that I mind it. So I've cut down all the bars, yeah? And now obviously you just need to cut the ends off every other one. So don't do all of them. Now let's see if we can do this and get the right ones, shall we? That's going to be entertaining. So we'll do the first one. And the third one. 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. Oh, Bob's your uncle. That's looking pretty good. And then we need to just make sure we do the same ones on the other end. So, 15.
I'm doing lots of bars.
I mean, obviously, you can make yours smaller. I mean, you can make it bigger if you really want something to display. But you can make yours smaller. And that you could have fewer bars, couldn't you? Right. Now we're going to just take out those bars that I've cut out. You can do this with scissors. Of course you can. It's not impossible. It's a lot easier with the craft knife, though, I have to admit. So I've got some prison bars here. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is with the bottom. I'm probably going to use my ruler again because what I want to do is I want to bend up the bottom and just make a really, really good crease along the bottom.
Mummy.
Hi.
I'm talking about bars.
Is that Paul and Silas?
Yeah.
Lovely. What we're going to do is we're going to stick these bars on. So I've got a flap at the bottom here. So can you see one side? I've made a flap at the bottom. I'm just going to decide where I'm going to put that on my card. I'm going to put it somewhere so that when it's in that position, you can see that's Miriam's drawing of Paul and Silas, and you can see them in prison there. So I'm just going to get some sellotape. Now, glue is probably not the best idea for this. You might be able to use some glue, but I think it would come unstuck quite quickly. I'm going to use quite a large bit of sellotape. Do you know what's the negative thing about not bringing scissors this week, Miriam?
No.
Oh, nothing to cut with sellotape. Don't do that with your teeth. It's a terrible idea.
No.
So I'm going to put these prison bars where I think they look like they're going to cover Paul and Silas in their prison. I'm going to put them about there. You can draw around your hand if you want. It's not really a craft I had in mind for this week, but if you want to, I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to wrap it around. I would recommend more than one piece of sellotape as well, probably, because you want to make sure it's really well fixed on. Oh, don't do this with your teeth. Oh, that's horrible.
Don't do it with your teeth.
Do not do it with your teeth. Make sure that your prison bars are going to cover Paul and Silas inside when it's up like this. Okay? So there they are. They're in their prison. Now, they're in prison, and that is not good, is it? They've been put in prison for reasons that are not very good. They've been telling the good news about Jesus. We don't want people to be put in prison for that, do we? We want people to be sharing that because it's such good news. But they've been put in prison because people do not like it. There they are, Paul and Silas behind their prison bars. But what they did was they didn't give up. They didn't give up at all. They sat in their prison and they sang music to God. They sang hymns, they sang songs, they prayed to God, they thanked God for all that God had done, they thanked God for Jesus. And do you know what happened, Min?
Yeah.
They kept on singing, and then the whole prison began to shake. There was an earthquake. Because of their singing, God sent an earthquake, and what happened? The prison was open and they could get out. And even the people that were in charge of the prison realised that God had done something really amazing. So they were in prison, but God made the earthquake come and the prison was open. The bars fell down. And even the people who put them in prison knew that God had done something amazing. So that is a bit about the first bit of Paul's journey so far. So what did we do? We did the light switch cover to remind us that just like that light that had come to Paul on the road, we are then called to be the light to everybody, just as Paul was. We talked about the fact that his journey has ups and downs. And so we've talked about some of the ups and downs that we face as well, things that are good and things that are bad in the same sort of journey. We talked about the fact that at this part of the journey, it doesn't end very well because they end up in prison, but then there's a good ending that follows that, which is that God sends an earthquake and the prison is open and they come free. So next week, we're going to hear a bit about Paul travelling by boat. We're going to hear about the fact that that's not always a good thing. And we're going to hear about, we're going to make some food together. Oh, it's going to be mad. It's going to be amazing. On the end card after us, you're going to see the things that you're going to need. But shall we sing now?
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about journey songs, and there are quite a few journey songs. I think if you were together today, one of the great things to do is talk about journeys. What's your favourite song?
I'm just going to put mine. Journey, Judy, we having a journey today. So we go to a journey. Whoa.
That was one I wasn't expecting. If you're at home, there's a really good game that you could play, which is Follow My Leader. So if one of you travels around the room in a particular way, bunny hopping or running or skipping, and other people have to follow you, that's a really fun journey game to play. We could play that later, couldn't we, Mim?
Look, Mummy.
Oh, yeah, you're a little bit black now from that, aren't you? You can wash your hands.
I really want to have a bath.
Yes, is that how you're going to make me give you a bath? I was going to give you one anyway, don't worry. So that's a fun game you can play. I was thinking about a journey song that I used to sing when I was in, we called it Sunday school, junior church. And it's one that I think grown-ups out there will know. And we'll just sing one verse and we'll sing it a couple of times. Should we sing this together, Mim?
Yeah.
It goes like this. One more step along the world I go. One more step along the world I go. From the old things to the new. Keep me travelling along with you, and it's from the old we travel to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. Do you like that? Should we sing that verse again? One more step along the world I go. One more step along the world I go. From the old things to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. And it's from the old we travel to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. I love that song.
Let's sing
You
it
can
again.
think of other verses. There are a lot. We'll sing it again in a
Do
second.
you know, I do love that one.
Do you love that one? Do you know what it's lovely
One
is?
step along me go, 'cause the world's a world.
Beautiful.
I love my world,
You
and
do.
I want to give it to me.
That is beautiful.
And I want to
What
keep
I love
it.
about that song is that it reminds us
Shall we
that
sing
there's
again?
always another step to take and that God is
Shall
with us
we
all the
sing
time.
again?
So even when our journeys
Shall
are
we sing
hard
again,
and
Mummy?
difficult, even when it's really hard going, God is with us. We'll sing it one more time and then we'll do the song we always do, shall we? So here's the song that reminds us that God will travel with us. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. One more step along the world I go. One more step along the world I go. From the old things to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. And it's from the old we travel to the new. Keep me travelling along with you. Oh, I love that one. Here's
Let's
another song.
Let's sing my song again.
You sing it to us and then we'll sing the song we always sing.
One step, 3 step, long a travel go. I want to keep my world, and I want to jump over it with a space rocket, and I want to keep it. I don't want to keep it. I don't want to give it to you.
Okay, that is such a beautiful song. Do you remember the song we always sing? If you've got a song that you want to sing for us, please do send us your videos. Should we sing a song together now that we always sing?
Yeah.
He's got the whole world. He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got all our journeys. Can you do a journey like that? He's got all our journeys in his hands. He's got all our journeys in his hands. He's got all our journeys in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got everybody here, even though we're not in the same place. Are you ready? He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got everybody here in his hands. He's got the whole world in his hands. Oh, I love that song. I know that Babyccinos love it too. Babyccinos, we can't wait to see you. But in the meantime, we hope that you stay safe. We hope that you have a good week. We hope you enjoy doing all your crafts. Don't forget to send us some pictures, whoever you are.
World bit.
Where? Oh, you're doing more, are you?
What?
I'm just going to finish this now, really.
You do. You've got many sons.
Oh yeah, that's true. We were singing Father Abraham has many sons. You can see that on a previous episode. All the previous episodes of Babyccinos are still up here on this Leeds North and East Methodists YouTube channel. Have a look, enjoy. There are some great crafts and some good stories. If you've joined us for the first time or you've done every single one of them, you know, we are so pleased to spend some time with you. Please do send us pictures or send me an email of anything you want to chat about. If you're a grown-up who is wondering a bit more about faith, use that email address too. I'll be really pleased to chat to you about some of the other ways that you can engage at the minute. Next week, we'll be back with some proper chaos. It's proper Babyccinos style next week. It's going to be mad. There's going to be baking. There's going to be waves. It's going to be amazing. So we're going to carry on looking at Paul's journeys next week. Should we say goodbye to everybody?
Bye.
Stay safe, Babyccinos. See you next week. Bye. Bye.